I want to talk about the Philippines today in terms of the country as an opportunity to invest in as a country. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Philippines, I'm going to share with you a little bit of information in terms of its situation and where it is. Well, it's a group of islands, over 7,000 islands actually, just sitting in Southeast Asia. It's an English-speaking country. It's a country that has had a variety of rulers over the centuries. It's had the Spanish involved, it's had the Americans involved, in fact even the British were involved for a short period of time in Manila. But it's got quite a diverse set of cultures across the country. If you go across and visit the cities in the north and compare them with the cities in the south. The population is just over 100 million people, and it's a vibrant economy. It's one of the fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia, and it has a very healthy GDP growth as well. It's got a great opportunity for tourism. It has developed a number of key skills in the electronics industry, in the furniture making industry, and in agriculture and aquaculture. I would say potentially it's what it's known for is its people in terms of an export. A lot of Filipinos go abroad and work in a variety of professions. Probably the usual one has been the healthcare industries around the world, where doctors and a lot of nurses and care workers are working in the United States, across Europe, across North America actually, certainly across the Middle East. And healthcare is one prime industry they target, and another one is the hospitality industry. But they are very, 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 very good at getting out into the world and selling their skills their skills in those industries. I was listening to a report on the radio, international radio, the other day, where Germany actually was looking at fulfilling at least 200,000 nurses from the Philippines for their healthcare institutions across Germany. So there's they have prided themselves at being very good at that, and a lot of the income they earn in these countries abroad they go and work in goes back to the Philippines as well. They do spend money. The Filipino consumer, they are a nation that spends money, and they are a country that is well educated. As I mentioned, they speak English as a primary language, although Tagalog is their native language. English is well spoken across the islands in the Philippines. Again, call centers have been a growth industry in the Philippines as well, because of the English language, and because of obviously the costs of setting up call centers in the Philippines compared with countries in Europe. The only other country that competes with that is India. So here's some information. First, I want to show you this clip on the Philippines to give you some bring you up to speed in terms of what the Philippines is all about.
Workspaces, technology, and infrastructure make up a business. But it takes the right people in the right place for a business to succeed.
We are Transcom Worldwide. We've been in the Philippines for 10 years.
We're Mode Controls Corporation. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary.
Our company is Continental, established 40 years ago.
My company is Unilever. We've been here for over 88 years.
The working skills and traits of our Filipino workers are that they are very highly educated, very knowledgeable, very dedicated.
We love the Filipino employees. Philippines has the highest literacy rate in the world. 95% of our employees are college graduates. So it's easy to give them the skills.
The learning curve of the Filipino employees is quite fast, and that makes it easy to work with them.
They also tend to be Western in the outlook while being Asian, and that allows them to connect with other influences quite easily.
Our Filipino workers, speaking as fluent English as they do, makes it very easy to work, to communicate with our partners around the world.
The difference with Filipinos is that they listen and they hear what isn't being said. That and their English proficiency makes them the best in the business.
Best in Asia.
With a population this large and strong, anything is possible for your business.
The right people make all the difference. Your business, our people. Invest in the Philippines.
Well, I think watching that very clearly, anyone who's serious about investing in Asia, in fact, before considering China or India, should look very seriously at the Philippines. If you're a European company that wants to put your first foot into the Asian market, then I would certainly recommend the Philippines as the first step, because it gets you right into the heart of Asia and it gets you into one of the best economies in Southeast Asia currently. I'm now going to show you another video. It's about 23 minutes long. It's by Tim Harcourt, who's the airport economist, who basically travels the world looking at the most economical locations for good business development. Have a good look at this video. I think it'll give you some more good insight into what the Philippines is all about when it comes to investment as a foreign investor.
Welcome to Manila, the hustling, bustling capital of the Philippines and where most of the world gets connected. I'm Tim Harcourt, the airport economist, and I'm going to show you around this vibrant country and look how its fortunes are changing in the Asian century. Manila is big, bright and brash, and the Filipinos that live here are a bubbly, gregarious people. Unlike many developing Asian markets, English is widely spoken and Western culture is embraced. Coming up, we'll find out how you can set up a local presence and do business here, ask a leading economist what's driving growth, and discover how you can give back to your local workforce. Let's start our journey and find out why the Philippines is one of Southeast Asia's most exciting economies. The Philippines is located in Southeast Asia between the South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean. It's made up of more than 7,500 islands. Greater Manila is both the capital and the largest city. It has a fast-growing population of over 100 million people, and that's just the ones that live there. Another 10 million Filipinos live outside the country, many working to earn money for family back home. That foreign income makes up a whopping 14% of the Filipino economy. The Philippines is unique in Asia. It is fiercely Roman Catholic with Spanish, American as well as local Filipino influences. It has a large English-speaking workforce which has driven growth in international call centres and professional services. The GDP of the Philippines is almost $300 billion US, making it the 40th biggest economy in the world. But given its large population of nearly 100 million people, it's well down the list in terms of GDP per capita, coming in at 127th. The economy is growing at 6%, inflation is low and unemployment sits around 6%. The Philippines' main trading partners are Japan, the US and China. The Filipino economy is growing steadily, has a young English-speaking workforce and sits right in the middle of East Asia. All this combines to make it a pretty attractive place to do business. But what's driving growth in this expanding market? And how can foreign companies do business here? I sat down with the head of Grant Thornton's Filipino practice to find out.
In the past few years, the Philippines has been the strongest, one of the strongest players in the region in terms of economy. We've not been affected by, some downturns in other parts of the world, and I see this to be a continuing trend.
Is it hard for a foreign business to enter the Philippines? Is it better to do it through direct entry or by finding a local partner?
I think for all business who are interested to come to the Philippine market, it is important that they understand it first so that they would know, who the players are, who the prospective customers are. And then from there, they would be able to decide whether they could go in on their own or would need to, go in with another partner. Filipinos are really looking for additional resources and would welcome partnership arrangements with multinationals.
How does the income tax
Yes.
and company tax structure
Okay.
differ in the Philippines and other Asian markets?
For corporation, the tax would be at 30% of net income. For individuals, we have a different tax rates. The top rate is 32%. Unfortunately, right now, the Philippines would be one of the highest tax rates, would have the highest tax rates in the region.
We hear a lot about the BPOs, the call centres, the professional services. What other industries in the Philippines are growing?
If you look at the Philippines, the population right now is already 101 million. That's a lot of people. And the requirements of this population has to be met. So we're talking about housing, we're talking about transportation, education, telecommunication is going to be a priority. So there are a lot of opportunities.
400 years as a colony, followed by Japanese occupation, dictatorships, and then finally true independence, it's been a bumpy ride for the Philippines. The 21st century has been good to the country and is now an emerging player in Asia. The Philippines was a sleepy oasis on the fringe of both Asia and the Pacific Ocean when Spanish explorer Magellan came calling in the early 1500s. Spain officially colonised the Philippines from 1565 and even named the country after its king, Philip II. An early attempt at independence failed as the US replaced the Spaniards as colonists in 1898. The Philippines didn't achieve full independence until after Japanese occupation in World War II. It was followed by a long stretch of military rule by infamous President Fernando Marcos in 1972, and democracy was restored in 1986. After some tough years in the 90s, the Philippines danced into the 21st century. The digital age and the rise of telecommunications propelled the economy, with the country's large, young, fluid English-speaking workforce attracting the call centre, professional services and medical industries. The Philippines' major industries are fishing and agriculture. It has also welcomed foreign investment and resources, still has the US as its strongest ally, and is benefiting from inclusion in regional partnerships such as ASEAN and APEC. The new government is cracking down on corruption, introducing 12 years of compulsory schooling and making it easier for foreign companies to enter the Philippines. Manila-based diplomat Amanda Gawley expects the strong economic growth will continue.
The macroeconomic conditions here are positive towards growth and investment, and I think there are opportunities in a range of different sectors for companies who are looking to come here. It's a very consumer-driven society and economy. There's a rising middle class and they've got money to spend and they want to spend it.
The Philippines has developed rapidly in just 3 decades of democracy. It's playing to its strengths and is a rising star in Southeast Asia. How does an emerging economy like this maintain sustainable growth and take the next leap forward? I spoke to the Asian Development Bank to find out.
Right now, the Philippines, which was the sick man of Asia for a long time, is having its moment in the sun, if you like, and it's now, the talk of the town. So there's a lot of interest, a lot of expectations building up about the Philippines right now.
Would you call the Philippines an investment-friendly country?
I think the Philippines is an investment-friendly country and is becoming friendlier. And that's the important thing. This new administration is looking to increase foreign investment and is looking at making conditions to invest a lot simpler and a lot more efficient. Addressing things like corruption is going to be a critical part of improving the overall investment climate.
The Philippines is famous for having the large skilled workforce, a lot of English speakers, but of course a lot of people leaving with the brain drain. Do you think that's actually a difficult policy challenge for the Philippines?
The overseas Filipino worker is the unsung hero of the Philippines and supports this system in many ways. But you're absolutely right. The Philippines is exporting its greatest resource, its people, right? And this is fine in the short term, but in the long term, the government has to address the need to keep these people skillfully and productively employed at home.
When you think about growth, do you also think about inequality?
The Philippines has had tremendous growth, but one of the unfortunate consequences is that poverty during this period has remained almost completely unchanged, and this is unacceptable. We need to make sure that growth is more inclusive, that it reaches a larger proportion of the people, that more people are involved in the growth process, and so we avoid inequality rising at a time when conditions for growth are good.
After the break, we look at how you can start selling into the Filipino market or set up a presence here. Telstra explains how the Philippines is different to other markets in Asia. And we talk to one South Australian business about finding a local distributor and managing relationships. Seven and a half thousand islands, from beachside towns like Boracay and Cebu to the hustle and bustle of hectic Manila and Davao City. The question is, how do you get products around 100 million Filipinos? I asked Rebecca Burrows from Australia Post how businesses can start exporting to the Philippines.
Your first tick is really saying, is my product something that the consumer over there is looking to buy and that they would think an Australian product is a good product for? Then really starting to look at, well, how would I market to them? Would I go through a marketplace? Would I go directly? Would I look for a partner? Is there a product there that I could match my product with and do some cross-sell with a local partner? So how would you actually reach those consumers? And then look at what barriers they have. So, how is the consumer going to pay you? The good news with the Philippines is that there's a really high usage of credit cards and they're probably more comfortable than some other markets with paying online. So as long as you've got a good gateway set up there, and we can help with that, but as long as you've got that set up, you're probably not going to reach too much of a problem there. And then it's how do you actually get your product to them? So the consumer, you've had a win, the consumer's ordered your product, how are you actually going to ship it to them? And that's obviously something that Australia Post can help with through our global alliances, and we can actually get that product from you here in Australia to that consumer over there in the Philippines.
When shipping to the Philippines, you pay an average 10.5% of total shipping value in duty, but it can go up to 65% depending on the product. You don't have to pay duty on products worth less than $15 US. Setting up a business anywhere is challenging, but doing it in a developing Asian market takes it to a whole other level. The process can be easy in the Philippines compared to other parts of the region because English is widely spoken and there's a good understanding of Western culture. I'm going to help you understand how to enter the market and use local partnerships to your advantage. Tom Beach is Telstra's country manager for the Philippines.
We've found that leveraging the experience of others has been really important, as well as the general business community and government agencies. The Philippine Economic Zone Authority has been wonderful for us, and they actually clear the way and clear a lot of the bureaucracy that others would face in setting up a business here.
When you set up in the Philippines, you've often got to find a local partner. How do you do that?
It's a long process, Tim. We've found that where we find partnerships is in the intersection between our strategy, our capability, and a partner's strategy and capability. And a lot of business in the Philippines is done over meals, and it's quite informal at the beginning. And it can take a long time. We've worked on partnerships for a year or two before anything fruitful has come of them. But it's worth sticking it out. Once you find the right partner, it can be a great accelerator of the work that you're doing in the Philippines.
Telstra is a major employer in the Philippines. What sort of challenges do you have here managing a large workforce as a foreign employer?
Trusting our local workforce has been a really important part of our development, and I think we've learned a lot about how to get the best out of people.
What responsibilities do you think you have as an employer?
Well, a big part of Telstra's culture in Australia is giving back to the communities in which we live and work. In October 2014, we started the Telstra Philippines Foundation, the first Telstra foundation outside of Australia. And through that, we're doing our part to try and break the cycle of poverty. And we do that through working with youth and education.
Has that community connection really made good business sense for you as well?
It definitely has. We find that the thing actually that resonates most with government in the Philippines is the fact that we're a good corporate citizen. And it's opened doors for us to do work with government departments, and it's given us an audience with many senior government figures that we may not have got otherwise.
And when thinking of the great opportunity in the Asian century, would you now put the Philippines economy in your top 5 or your top 3 looking around the region?
Oh, it's interesting. There was actually a United Nations study that was just released that put it at number 8 globally in terms of places to invest in the next 3 years. We see it as a really exciting place. There are definitely some headwinds, like all countries, that the Philippines will face into. But if the current economic growth carries on at the same rate or even accelerates, I think there are wonderful things ahead for the Philippines.
So we just heard from the big end of town. Let's find out how a smaller business has entered the Filipino market. Sony Clean makes specialist cleaners for the medical and food and beverage industries. I asked founder Susan Lee why they started exporting to the Philippines.
We're making Malaysia as the sort of original hub for us and we sort of pick on the countries that's about 4 or 5 hours away from Malaysia. And Philippines comes up about 5 years ago. And we've met a lot of Filipino people and they all speak very good English. I was very surprised when I visited the hospitals, the 2 major ones, which is St. Luke's and the Makati Hospital. It is very modern. They have people in charge of the area that we're selling into. She's trained in the US. She understood what we're selling because even though it was new to the Philippines market, the people there are very highly educated, and it helps us to sort of discuss some of the issues, and we plan a lot of things for them, and it was a very good market.
How did you find your distributor in the Philippines?
We actually use Austrade. What happened is that we commissioned Austrade to find us the right partner because we know that business models depends on getting the right partner in any countries. It's those with connections, ability to understand a product, and the ability to have a good sales force and a good servicing department. So that's very important to make sure there's no downtime.
So how important are government relationships?
In the ASEAN country or Southeast Asia, it opens the door a lot for us. If the government is part of it, part of the partnership of exposing us to some of the areas that we are interested in, that's the best way forward because it really opens the doors and we get to the right people.
The Philippines is a unique mix with Spanish, American and Asian influences, along with a local Tagalog language and culture. Just because English is widely spoken in the Philippines doesn't mean you can't have an interesting cultural experience. Learn a few words of Tagalog and some local phrases will go a long way. You also need to respect Philippines' Roman Catholic religion and proud history of independence. Value female business associates and leaders, because the Philippines certainly does. It has women in top positions in politics and government, and often in the presidency. Filipinos love a good time. Dining and singing are all part of the culture. I spoke to the guide about the best places to eat and soak in the spirit of Manila during a trip to the city.
There's Entertainment City. It's a fast-growing business district now. Other than that, of course, Makati, which is our central business district, and Bonifacio Global City. For culture, Intramuros, the old city.
What are some of the guidelines you should follow when you're hosting or being taken out in the Philippines?
Just follow the nonverbals from the host regarding who sits where. We're pretty much egalitarian. So just feel free to sit anywhere, but of course, defer to the host. For the Filipino, it's very important to maintain smooth interpersonal relationships. And for that, you have to know how to take subtle hints and nonverbal cues. And so we have an expression which means makuha ka sa tingin. It's Tagalog for you know it by a look. So if you look at each other and we're actually communicating by nonverbal cues that this person should not be seated with another person, things like that.
And how do you get around Manila? Public transport, taxis, GPs? How do you do it?
Public transport, you can't, forgive me for saying so, it's character building. It's more reliable to take Uber or Grab. If you go to a far-off place, make sure that you are with people you trust.
Operating in developing countries often carries a greater risk, but you can deliver greater rewards if you plan and play your cards right. There's a lot to manage, from red tape and government relations to coordinating local staff. We've followed the story of natural health company Blackmores throughout the series, and I spoke to CEO Christine Holgate to find out how they can manage risk across the region. With the growth of the middle class in Asia and healthcare and so on, it's a great opportunity, but it's a risk as well. What do you think is the biggest risk of your expansion in the Asian century?
The first of those in Asia is probably the regulatory and the government environment, because that does evolve and change, and that for people a long way away can seem complex. But there are other risks too, like foreign exchange. You write a business plan, you think about when your payback period is, and then for some reason that currency decouples or devalues or strengthens, and that can significantly change where you're up to in your investment plan. And the third part is things way beyond your control, which is what I call local conditions. And some of those are in the environment. As we know, in Taiwan, we've had typhoons. In Thailand, we've had massive floods. And of course, there's been periods of social unrest in some of the countries we operate in. So I call those local conditions. And they're all things that need serious thought through when looking at an expansion strategy.
And how do you manage these risks?
A strong local team enables you to have, doesn't protect you from, but perhaps understand the regulation changes better and really understand whether something on our television looks like a major issue with a change of government really is or not. You know, and it really puts things in context. And I think on the foreign exchange, of course, there are financial things like hedging, but I would suggest that most people really great at that are working at Macquarie Bank. I believe that really just brings you home to, we should never become too dependent on any one source of revenue. So it's really about the diversity still, and continues to be, in managing those risks. So there's not one silver bullet, there's different things that you need to do.
So is your strategy being different in developing emerging Asian markets compared to mature high-income ones?
Well, I think first of all, Tim, the region is a region. It's a collection of markets. And whether it's a developing market or developed market, actually each country requires its own strategy. And I think that's quite important. It's not one answer fits all. You really do need to look at the uniqueness of every individual market.
So Blackmores has been very successful in Asia. What 3 tips would you give other companies wanting to expand into Asia, Christine?
Be patient. If you're looking for an economic return next quarter reporting period, Asia perhaps isn't the market for you. So you've got to be patient and you've got to be resilient. The second one is, I think you need to make sure that you've got a strong board behind you backing that strategy. Because in the journey of Asia, there are ups and downs on that curve, and you really need to have an aligned team behind you who really believes in that strategy. And the third one is go local. You know, don't underestimate the power of having strong local team, strong local partnerships.
Blackmore's Asian strategy has well and truly paid off. Its Asian income has grown from just 10% of revenue 7 years ago to 50% today. Well, the Philippines is certainly a destination that can surprise. Come and see it for yourself. Let's recap what we've learned about doing business in the Philippines. The Philippines is an emerging market which carries a degree of risk. Make sure you do your research before you jump in. Join an Asian Society chapter or local Filipino business council at home and your country's Chamber of Commerce on the ground in the Philippines. It's a predominantly Roman Catholic country, so be aware of religious icons and customs, and note the country shuts down around religious holidays, especially Easter. Follow local regulations and register with your home embassy when you arrive. And finally, enjoy yourself and relax with partners or clients. Filipinos love singing, and even at the office party, someone will get up and sound like they've just won American Idol.
Now, I think considering countries out there around the world, in Europe, in Africa, and in the Middle East and in North America, the Philippines takes an awful lot of beating in terms of an opportunity to grow a good business, because there's so much virgin territory there in terms of opportunity. It's good low-cost entry. It's a well-educated population in terms of being able to do a lot of the work. It's English speaking. It sits in a good consumer market, but it sits in a region that's got significant growth as well. Having been to the Philippines many times, I can honestly say that it by far is the best place to go and invest. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.